Good morning and welcome to the SEC Daily here at Southeastern 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by my co-host, Gavin Schoenwald. Today, we're going to discuss the weekend that was in SEC football. You've got Georgia and Alabama, I think, emerging as the big stories following the weekend. You got some teams that lost games that didn't want to lose games, especially the coaches of those teams probably did not want to lose games, given the climate around their tenures and those such things. Gavin can't wait to unpack this one today.
Yeah, it'll be a good one, Chris, man. A great weekend overall, and some great games all around, really, if we're being honest here. And like you said, there were some games that teams didn't want to lose that did, such as, Florida and maybe some others that we'll get into. But I think we're going to start off with the big ones with LSU, Bama, and then obviously what happened down there in Athens between Missouri and Georgia. So, Chris, it's Monday. People call it Overreaction Monday, but I try to be as stable as I can be. So let's get right into it.
Well, the league certainly, in terms of remaining relevant in the national picture with the playoff and all, check the boxes it needed to check. I'm not saying the commissioner's out there rooting for Alabama and Georgia, but if he's watching his pocketbook, he might have. So we'll get into that in just a minute. Always looking for sponsors here. Email caroline.smith at southeastern14.com if you are interested. Our show is presented by BetOnline. The last of major pro sports leagues has kicked off. BetOnline is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL, college football, and the NHL in full swing, BetOnline is your number one source for wagering odds, news, trends, and predictions. And you know what? They left something out. College basketball starts this afternoon, Gavin.
Yep.
About 4 hours from now.
Yep.
Georgia and Oregon, I think, they're going to be playing. So
wow. That's
wild. Get that there too. You can bet everything NBA at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access for every sport, anytime. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alabama and Georgia had big games this weekend. Georgia was I think a 15-ish point favorite over Missouri. Did not take care of business to that degree, but took care of business enough to get a nice win. Alabama, I was really worried about that matchup with LSU. Just thought that if they got in a track meet, I had some questions about their ability to keep up.
Yeah.
Instead, what happened was Jaden Daniels got hurt late. I don't think that made a difference in the outcome. And maybe the bigger thing, and this is kind of what we were watching going in, like if there was one mystery heading into the weekend in these two big games, it was, has LSU's defense really gotten better?
Yep.
Or was it just a product of the schedule? And I feel like we got our answer there, because I think that was the difference in the game. I feel like Jaden Daniels or Jalen Milroe he could have thrown a hand grenade in spots of that field the way it opened up and not hurt a person.
Yep.
That was the way that Alabama game planned that and found stuff that worked. I thought was the difference in that game.
Jalen Milroe was terrific, and that was the story of the game for me, Chris. And let's just think about this roller coaster of a season that Alabama has been on. Right? They lose an opening, beginning of the season game at home to Texas, and they look lifeless on the road against USF. And then now we've totally seen Jalen Milroe develop into not only a great quarterback, but an elite quarterback. And there's he went toe-to-toe. I still do believe that Jaden Daniels is the front runner for the Heisman. And he went toe-to-toe with him, and some can even argue that he outplayed him. And he goes all the way, runs for all these yards. And look, he's developed to where we saw early in the season that there was some shakiness with the Alabama offense because Milroe took a bunch of sacks because he wasn't thinking pass first. He would just try to run. Look, he can still run and hurt you with his feet, as we saw. He scored 4 touchdowns with his legs, but he's still looking to pass first now. And that's the biggest difference that I've seen in Milroe and how he's developed throughout the year. And I got to give credit as well to Alabama's defense and Kevin Steele. I mentioned this because I first saw it in that Tennessee game when Joe Milton and Tennessee came out and just looked untouchable for that first half in Tuscaloosa. And then Alabama shut them down in the second half. it was a similar story here. LSU scores a big touchdown right before the half that shifts the momentum. And Chris, between LSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, the three opponents that Alabama's played this year, Alabama's outscoring them combined 56-10 in the second half. That's pretty remarkable. And not only that, but that's a plus 62 third quarter scoring margin. And so whatever they're doing at halftime, whether it's Kevin Steele, whether it's Saban, or the staff as a whole, is spot on, man. And I got to give it to I saw that in the Tennessee game. I thought they'd make the adjustments. It was actually a part of my bold prediction from this past week. I wasn't as accurate, but this one was maybe the closest one I had, was the adjustments that Kevin Steele, Saban, and those guys make at halftime. Man, did it make a difference in that second half. Oh, yeah, and it also helps that Alabama goes 11 for 14 on third down. That's 78%.
Okay, Jalen Milroe was involved in 43 of Alabama's 69 snaps. But here is a stat for the weekend. Jalen Milroe rushed for 155 yards this weekend. And that is 203 more yards than he rushed for the last 3 weekends combined.
He's dangerous. His feet are so – and you know what I saw is the acceleration is second to none. And he played like it was a real deal. I'm not comparing him. But as I'm watching this guy play, I'm like, this is what Michael Vick looked like when his prime and with Atlanta, right? It's that style of play. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I don't know that he had quite that gear.
Well, I'm not saying that he's that player. That's why I said that. That's why I said that. I'm not saying he's that player. But my point is, he gets outside the pocket, and the defense coordinator, you are grabbing that clipboard as hard as you can because he can beat you. And sure enough, that's what won Alabama the game. And he's confident. He's got the team. The team is rallied around Jalen Milroe. He's excited in the post-game interviews, smiling. He's having fun. And it's easy to root. It's easy to root for guys like that. It really is. And so I give my props to Jalen Milroe. I still give my props and obviously thoughts and prayers to Jaden Daniels, a monster hit he took from Dallas Turner there. We can go into depth about that. I think it's a bang play. 20 years ago, it's football. Maybe now it's targeting. I don't really know. But regardless, man, he's still an unbelievable player. But I got to give my credit to where it's due, and that Jalen Milroe, man. We talked about this being a legacy game for Jaden Daniels. And on Monday, we're sitting here talking about how well Jalen Milroe played, man. I got to give it to him.
Did you think that was a dirty hit? I mean, I think people should be careful when they throw that word around.
So here's the thing. And is there dirty players in college football and sports as a whole? Sure. They're more inclined to do things. Dallas Turner is just in and around the quarterback so much more often that maybe he just has an opportunity to make things look. I don't think he's a dirty player. I think it gets really dangerous, especially where, you put on your helmet, you strap in the chin strap. If you get caught right on that chin strap and it lifts the face mask up, you're taking a hit to your bare chin because that's getting lifted from a helmet moving at you however many miles per hour. Do I think it's dirty? I don't. I think it's really unfortunate. I don't think he was trying to hurt him. But also, Chris, you and I sat here last week and talked about how Jaden Daniels has taken monster hits all year.
Yeah.
All year. And look, maybe this one couldn't have been avoided because he's sitting in the pocket and whatnot. But he's taken monster hits all year. And you and I sat there and said, if he has a chance if he gets beat up enough and has to leave this game, LSU doesn't stand a chance. Look, I think the game was over before this happened, but still a really unfortunate situation. And I really hope it doesn't affect his Heisman odds or in the race moving forward.
Let's flash back to September the 9th. Alabama loses to Texas. Texas really in a script that was the opposite of this one.
Yep.
Poured it on in the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a lot of pressure to be playing for your life as a team from the night of September 9th on. Since then, they have beaten South Florida, Ole Miss, won at Mississippi State, won at Texas A&M, beat Arkansas, beat Tennessee, beat LSU those last 3 at home.
Mm-hmm.
That is if you're looking at power rankings, Ole Miss is close to a top 10 team. A&M's in the top 25 still. Arkansas, a top 40 team. Tennessee, a top 10 or 12 team. LSU, same. I mean, they have now ripped off a series of really impressive wins.
And I think when you look at how they were at the beginning of the season, right, what they were is they were a younger, new team with an unproven quarterback, right, with an early loss. There's some real questions. But sure enough, that roster is littered with talent. And when you have great coaches, Nick Saban, Kevin Steele, even Tommy Rees, the job he's done, I got to give my props there now, especially on the second stretch of the season. When you give great coaches a lot of time with great players, usually great things happen. And so I got to give my props there to them. And, you said you want to rewind to September 9th. Okay, let's do it, Chris. Let's look at Texas and Alabama and the trajectories of their season, right? Look, you go into Bryant-Denny, you get a win. That is still probably the best win in the country of anyone's resume. But Texas has survived against Houston, survived against Kansas State, and look at how Alabama's ascending, right? And so, look, when you rewind, did Texas beat Alabama? They did in their house. It's a huge deal. But the trajectories of their season, Alabama's getting better and better and better and better and look better each week. I can't say the same about Texas right now. You go into overtime against Kansas State and really probably should have lost that game, if we're being honest. I know Quinn Ewers is injured, but still that roster is talented enough to where that should not be a game at all. And so it's just going to be really interesting to see if we get to a point in the conversation of who's getting in, who's not for the college football playoff, and you're looking at Alabama and Texas – and you're saying, okay, Texas beat Alabama, but Alabama's playing way better and looks like a way better team this time. It's just going to be interesting to see what that committee values. I do think the outright win, especially being on the road, would give Texas the edge. But, man, I'd be lying to you if I said Texas or Alabama, and even Texas, but Alabama for sure is a completely different team than we saw that night on September 9th.
Well, look at it again, to go over the bigger wins, and I just listed them all off, but specifically Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, Texas. Texas is still a playoff contender with one loss set to Oklahoma. Yep. Those other three teams, well, I mean, Ole Miss is still a contender. If Ole Miss doesn't lose out again, and I think Ole Miss is going to get the benefit of not having to play an SEC title game against Georgia. We'll get to the Bulldogs here shortly, and could do the run the table, finish the regular season with one loss, then you're doing a lot of scoreboard watching in Oxford. But here's the point. LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, if they don't have to play Alabama, all three of those teams, and again, Ole Miss still in there, are still in the playoff mix right now as of this morning, if not for Alabama. I don't know how many teams can say they have wins under those circumstances.
The truth. And Texas's loss to Oklahoma is looking worse now. The OU's lost to Kansas, and now they lost to Oklahoma. That's not helping them at all. I can say a little bit of the same thing for Ohio State, too. That Notre Dame win, we were like, wow, what a massive on the road. And now Notre Dame's a 3-loss team, right? Like it's not as impressive anymore. And so, like I said, we want to rewind to September 9th. Texas gets a massive win in Tuscaloosa. We think the dynasty is over. They look lifeless at USF the next week. And then sure enough, Saban and his team just start ascending the whole way. And Texas is plateauing a little bit. And so, look, it's going to be really interesting to see how all this ends. I could not be more impressed with Jalen Milroe and his ability to make plays. Jace McClellan's getting some traction now. They're a tough runner. Man, it's inevitable, Chris. We're on a collision course for Georgia, Alabama. After we all said the most wide open we've ever seen this conference. Who knows who's going to get it, who this and there. And it's still the big bad boys in the end, Alabama and Georgia. So I just got to give my props there. What an unbelievable coaching job Saban's done this year.
Well, you really have 11 playoff contenders after this weekend. The last two that squeak in there are Louisville and Ole Miss, and they're remote shots, particularly Louisville. I don't know that Louisville's going to be able to, although if they get Florida State in the ACC title game, which is looking like a very likely matchup, who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, the other one of those, of course, in the SEC, other than Ole Miss, would be Georgia, which in a take care of business game, Georgia did just that. Carson Beck was good again. They got the Nazir Stackhouse interception late, which was probably the defining play of that game. And Georgia has not beaten an impressive slate of teams so far. For the most part, that's their best win. But boy, beat Ole Miss, win at Tennessee, and at Georgia Tech, presumably, which won't be a layup for them, but should be a game they can win handily. Georgia Tech made that interesting last year. Then you get that showdown with Alabama.
Right.
They were all waiting. But I hope, well, I mean, look, for the drama of the league and the best interest of the league, best thing would be for Georgia to get there unbeaten and Alabama to get there with one loss.
Yep.
Because I think from that point, the winner you're going to have a hard time. I mean, I say that. You just never know other places.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten's going to have a big say in that. And the Pac-12 might too, depending on what Oregon does. But I think it's going to be hard to keep. I mean, if it's Georgia, you're not going to keep Georgia out at that point. And if it's Alabama, I think with that gauntlet of games at that point, I don't know how you leave Alabama out either.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to find out this week. Both teams can clinch. Alabama can clinch the West, and Georgia can clinch the East this weekend. So by this time next week, we should know who's meeting in Atlanta, assuming these two teams win.
Yeah. Neutral field right now, you match up Alabama and Georgia. And I'm looking at the computers. It is almost a pick 'em. I mean, it's Georgia maybe by a half point.
Yeah, I believe it. And each week, to be honest with you, I think it gets even a little bit closer because, like I said, Alabama's looked better and better and better each week. And the most important position in football, the quarterback position, he's growing exponentially, and that's Jalen Milroe. And so, look, Georgia's won 26 ball games in a row. It's going to be really hard for me to pick against them until I see them lose a game. At the same time, you don't make money betting against Nick Saban. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out in the end. But regardless what it is, look, it's two great teams. This conference as a whole has some really solid teams in and around the top. Ole Miss, Tennessee having another good year. And then obviously the two big dogs in Georgia and Alabama. So this will all end eventually out as we saw, but what a roller coaster ride it's been for the Southeastern Conference this year.
So Georgia, Alabama, SEC championship right now, you'll take Georgia.
I would, but it's a lot closer than I think it would have been if you asked me that last week, Chris.
Yeah. FPI this morning has got Alabama with a better shot of getting to the title game. It's by like 3%. It's not by a lot, but again, that's got to do with remaining schedule. The worst of Alabama's is behind it.
Yeah.
The worst of Georgia's is ahead of it.
Yep. That's it. And so we'll see. I think best thing for Georgia obviously is you get the big win against Ole Miss this weekend. Then you don't have to worry about, if you still get upset in Neyland Stadium. That may have playoff implications, but making it to Atlanta, winning the SEC, especially with how good this conference is, definitely holds value. However you get there, you obviously want to show up undefeated, not with one loss like Alabama is. But I think it takes the pressure off a whole lot if you find a way to win this weekend against Ole Miss.
I'm less bullish on Georgia's chances of losing to Ole Miss this weekend, just after Ole Miss's defense. Offense is the name of the game right now. It's why we said I had some questions about Alabama being able to beat LSU, but you got to have a defense up to a certain standard too.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Ole Miss is there. I think Ole Miss is a really good team, maybe a number 10 in the country team, a team that I think next year, if you have a college football playoff, the expanded one that we're going to get, a team that definitely I think is for sure going to have a say. It would likely have a say in that format, even with a loss to Georgia, presuming that is how it goes down.
Yeah.
I just think that defense on the road, I don't trust them to get enough stops to win that game.
Well, I think when you speak about Ole Miss, I think it's two things. One, what you just said it, Chris, is they have not been the same team on the road. They didn't look great against Auburn, found a way to win it, and then they laid an egg in Tuscaloosa with a golden opportunity when Alabama was reeling after losing to Texas and then showing up lifeless against USF. But the second thing is you can argue that this is Lane Kiffin's most complete team in Oxford yet.
Yeah.
You have Jackson Dart, who's playing really well, Quinshad Judkins, who's finally getting his legs going and churning these long runs. And then Trey Harris is a man amongst boys.
Oh my!
I mean, you throw it up to this
Those
guy.
Catches.
These catches, and they're not like they're contested. They are all like literally 50-50 balls, and he makes them like 90-10 and comes down with every single one. And so, what an addition he's been to this team. A three-headed monster between him, Dart, and Judkins. But you're right, Chris. The defense is we all know Lane Kiffin, offensive, innovative. All these look, they even tried to hide a player and they threw it to him for a wide open touch. Like he's finding new ways to innovate this game, right? But his Achilles heel over and over again is not having an elite defense that we know and we've seen from teams like Georgia and Alabama is something you need in this conference in order to win national championships.
All right, I want to do winners and losers from this weekend besides those teams that we just went over. Before that, a reminder, our podcast brought to you by myperfectfranchise.net. If you are sick of working for someone else, looking for a better life that you can live on your terms, the guy that can help you understand the risks and rewards of that, Andy Ludicky of myperfectfranchise.net. He will help you find the perfect franchise based on your goals, your dreams, your skills, your financial requirements. In other words, your personalized American dream. He will educate you on the process, work with you every step of the way. There is no obligation. His services are free. Call him 404-973-9901. Andy is a wonderful human being. He will invest a lot of time in you. And what he's looking to do, he's not looking to just use you as a way to get a big commission. He is trying to figure out what makes you tick and what you need out of life and what franchise can provide that opportunity. He has done that for a bunch of people. He will do it for you too. Again, 404-973-9901. Fill out a free questionnaire and get started. All right, winners of the weekend. Probably the biggest one was Arkansas outside of the ones we talked about. Arkansas, I mean, that was one of those games that you did not want to be the loser. And boy, we'll get to Florida in a minute.
Correct.
But that breathed a little bit of life back into Razorback Nation this weekend at a time that it really needed it. And now you're looking down and you're going, okay, we got 3 wins. We got Auburn next weekend. We got that in Fayetteville. Winnable. FIU, bottom 5 or 10 team in the country.
Yep.
Winnable, barring some unforeseen disaster. And Missouri, in a weird rivalry game, hey, you get to that point, you bought yourself maybe a little confidence with there'd be 3 wins in a row at this point if you can get there. Things suddenly looking up for the Razorbacks, and one of the reasons is you cast off the piece, and Danny, that a lot of people thought was the problem. I was skeptical. I just watched the way they blocked, or maybe better said, didn't block, and I just thought, I don't know that a coordinator change in the middle of the season is going to help that. Guess what? A coordinator change in a bye week in between absolutely helped that. So did help to Rocket Sanders, by the way.
Yeah, it helps. Just like you said, you nailed it, Chris. It helps when you got really good players too. And I see my man Gregory in the comments, man. Congratulations to Arkansas. Not only on a great win, but maybe the most needed win of the season. You lose 6 in a row. You go on the road to Florida, the Swamp, where they have not lost a lot often, and you find a way to win that one. And so, like you said, but this comes back down to the players, man. A back and forth game, especially late in that fourth quarter. Really, really enjoyable game to watch. I was sitting in the tailgate lots at Vanderbilt, and I was actually glued to the TV watching this one. And an awesome, awesome game, especially there towards the end. But you know what it was? And finally what we saw, what Arkansas fans thought they could depend on all year, was when push came to shove and it was time to win or lose that game, KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders made the plays that needed to be done. And that's what Arkansas fans have been looking for all year. You start the overtime period, you hold Florida to a field goal, and then you get a holding call. So now it's 1st and 20. 1st and 20, touchdown to win it, field goal to tie it. In the first play, KJ Jefferson scrambles, runs over a guy, gets a first down. Next play, handoff, Rocket Sanders bounces off a couple of tackles. Now you're down to the 5. That's 30 yards in 2 plays from your best 2 players. And then you score, obviously, on the slant and walk it off in the Swamp. And so got to give my credit to where it's due on Sam Pittman and those guys. Chris, you and I talked about Arkansas needing to steal possession. I mean, maybe more. I've never seen someone steal a ball from Ricky Pearsall like we saw at the very beginning of that game, and then take it back. Obviously, I don't want to call it a scoop and score because the ball never even hit the ground. He just ripped it out of his hands and took off for 35 yards, and that was a huge play. Arkansas scored 14 points in the first 3 minutes of the game. A quick start and then a back and forth and some resilience there from the Hogs. So huge congratulations to those guys. But, man, it was good to see KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders kind of be in the prime as we're so used to seeing them in years past, Chris.
I keep this composite power poll just for my records to tell me how good teams are or aren't. And it's kind of like how many points above and below average are you? I use 4 computers that are kind of mainstream. I won't get you in the weeds too much. But you average those out. Arkansas sitting in that thing this morning at 37th nationally. Again, suggesting that is more a team that's been unlucky and played a tough schedule than a team that's bad.
I think that's fair.
Now you throw and that was with an offense that has been dysfunctional 90% of the year. Okay. Now you throw in an offense that works. Hey, the Razorbacks might have a little something here.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there watching that game on Saturday, Chris, and I'm like, this Arkansas team is way better than 2-6, way better. And you look back at their losses, right? And they're like 3, 7, 6, whatever it may be. and some real heartbreaker games there. And man, did they need this win? And we saw KJ Jefferson answer the bell, scoring late in the fourth quarter, and then putting his team on the back in overtime. Rocket Sanders, healthy, physical. Man, is he fun to watch. And then when they're in the backfield together, obviously that's a two-headed monster. That's really tough to stop. There's guys on the outside who are long, lanky. Look, 2-6. Now you're 3-6, a huge win. Chris, you just went through the remaining schedule. Who knows how this season ends up? I think that they'd be a little quick to jump the gun here and maybe look for a new coach at the end of the year. You can see it all over the place. The structure of the program. Look, the wins and losses may not have been there this year. Tough, heartbreaking losses. But you're lying to yourself if you don't look at that team and say, man, there's talent all over the place that you can definitely compete in this conference for years to come. So it'd be interesting to see what the future of is for Sam Pittman in Arkansas. But dang, does this win definitely help?
Yeah, I hope it works. I root for good people.
Me too.
And look, he's one of them. The guy on the other sideline is Billy Napier. We'll get to the losers in a minute, and Billy Napier in Florida fit in that category. Just briefly, I guess winners this weekend, Auburn and Jarquez Hunter. I think some of that, I hate to say, more just about Vandy being bad, but Hunter comes out, rips off 2 huge runs in the first quarter. Auburn never looks back at that point. So Jarquez Hunter in a weekend with some really big offensive numbers. He was a guy that's in the conversation there. Ole Miss, we talked about that one a little bit. Jackson Dart has about 400 yards of total offense in that one. So as much as we have sort of lamented Ole Miss's defensive performance, you got to give props to that offense. Tennessee's defense winner this weekend, 2 pick sixes, allows only 3 points. So you're plus 11 with Tennessee's defense on the field. Not often you see that. And, South Carolina, Xavier Legette was good again this weekend. What would he goes 9 for 217 in the Jacksonville State game that we thought could be tricky for them under the circumstance. So give her props to the Gamecocks for pulling that one out.
I will. At the same time, Jacksonville State's driving. They're down by 3. They're driving with about 2 minutes left to win that game and just got bailed out by a horrible throw that ended up with the pick 6. But we've said this multiple times over and over again, and I hate that we have to keep bringing it back up, but I keep seeing evidence of it. There seems to be a little bit of a disconnection there in Columbia this year, Chris.
Yeah.
And, between the head coach and the narrative of what this program can be. And look, I am more than anyone about you celebrate the wins, man. They are hard to come by in this league, but also just as a whole. You work your tail off as a player year round for 365 days for 12 days a year, for 12 days. And one of those ends with a win. I don't care if you're playing Alabama or whatever school to blind. Like you celebrate that thing. And so I hear him there. Obviously, I'm referring to Shane Beamer's post-game presser that has provided a plethora of highlights this year. But there just seems to be a little bit of a disconnection. And look, I think Shane Beamer is a funny guy. I think obviously, it speaks for it in recruiting. Guys like playing for him, but I'm not sure he handles adversity as well as maybe some other people in this conference. And as we know, this is a tough job in any school in this conference. And so it's just going to be really interesting to see how they finish the season and then how the offseason, what the narratives are, obviously when he speaks, but in the media as well, because, as a player, I see this and I see what he says in front of, the media and people and writers, and it's a question mark. And then it makes me wonder, what's he saying when it's just the team behind closed doors? And so, look, I'm rooting for them. Like you said, I think Shane Beamer's a fine guy, and I root for good people. But, man, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up because that's the biggest storyline in Columbia. It's not the win this past weekend. It's that there's a continuous disconnection or fracture that just seems to be getting a little bit bigger between the head coach and his fan base right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact remarks that he said.
He went along the lines of because they won the game obviously, and it was a lot closer than people maybe anticipated, and there were some real moments where Jacksonville State takes the lead in the second half, and then some real moments where, as I said, Jacksonville State driving to win the game and got bailed out by a horrible throw that led to a pick 6. And basically the press conference, the first 3 questions were, it was basically as like a loss. They were asking about a loss. And so he was just kind of checking some media members saying it's, we need to celebrate the wins and this and that. And there was a little bit of a rebuttal. And anyway, you guys can look it up. I'm sure it's all over social media or YouTube. But they got, Vandy upcoming. And so Vandy's reeling as well, Chris. That's something we talked about and haven't looked great. But I'm not sure if either of these teams are, to be honest with you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend.
All right, back to the Beamer thing. Man, am I dreaming this, or were there some remarks about directed towards fans leaving that game early?
I'm not sure if I saw that.
Okay.
I do know when I was watching some of the game, it did not look like prime Williams Bryce that I know. Now, at the same time, look, I understand it's Jacksonville State, a middle of the season, out of conference, lower opponent game. I totally understand that. But when Williams Bryce is rocking, that is an absolute advantage to the home team. And it is hard to play in. I've played there, I think, either 2 or 3 times now, and twice at night. And when it's at night and they're rolling and they're playing Sandstorm, I mean, that is intimidating, especially on third down. And it's tough to win there. And Gamecocks fans have the ability, but man, I need to see them fill the seats a little bit more. That's been disappointing because I've seen what that place can be, and I understand Beamer's remarks there because it's a weapon. It's a weapon. And you know what? You would talk about weapons too. And I'm sorry that this is a little long-winded here, Chris, but what the heck's happened to South Carolina special teams this year? That used to be their backbone, and it literally won them games in the past. Like, it was an absolute weapon, and now I'm seeing fake punts against Jacksonville State, throwing jump balls into like Xavier Legette, who's playing gunner, who's double covered, and then there's no chance. And so I don't know if they're getting too aggressive there or what it was, but South Carolina's special teams in years past has been an absolute weapon, and it's just totally dropped off this year. And obviously it's shown in their record because it did literally win them games last year.
Well, the thing I think Shane Beamer's going to have to work on getting his emotions under control. I like the guy. I don't know him, but just everything I hear about him is a lot of things that we need in college athletics. So I'm not going to go on a Shane Beamer bashing tour here, but if they're calling out the fans, look, I have maintained for a long time, if you're picking the best football fan base in the conference, I think South Carolina's got an argument to be in there. And here's why. Okay, maybe it's not the big, maybe Tennessee gets more, Georgia gets more, whatever that looks like, right? But this is I remember back when Lou Holtz was there a while back, and they had back-to-back, I think, winless seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Their fans still showed up.
Yeah.
Their fans still showed up. They've been the number 2 program in their state for the better part of the last decade. As Clemson has gotten the fruits of its labors, winning a couple national titles. I don't know. I didn't hear the comments. I think that, but you don't want to start questioning a fan base that has traditionally been there. And not that Carolina has not done some good things, but it's not Alabama. It's not Georgia. It's not Florida. It's not LSU. It's not Tennessee. And I know Tennessee, it's been leaner there lately, but historically Tennessee's had a lot more to. It's not even Ole Miss right now.
Yeah.
And that's not a place. I would never think of pointing the finger at that fan base in terms of guys who don't show up or maybe are too hard on their guys. I would look a lot of other places first.
Yeah, and I think and maybe this is a reach of a metaphor, but like you said, there's Alabama, LSU, even Tennessee now. Those are big time historically winning programs, and South Carolina has won as well. Maybe not as much as them, but when you talk about like pound for pound for what the program is, South Carolina may have the most loyal and best fans in this conference, truly. Yeah. And so, it's disappointing to see out. Like I said, full disclosure, that's where I was going out of high school before I had a change of heart and just decided to go to Vandy. And a huge allure for me, and I know several other recruits, was that fan base and how loyal they are and how loud they are and how passionate they are. And that is a weapon. That is an absolute weapon. And so it goes back to land the plane here. There's a disconnection right now, Chris. There's a disconnection right now between the head coach and those loyal fans in Columbia. And they need to figure it out soon. Otherwise it could get ugly, because that offseason, if you don't enter that offseason on a high note, it's a long, long offseason. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. So some losers for the weekend.
Florida.
I don't want to go too long on these because we got bowl projections to get to. Florida. Oh, Billy Napier. You didn't need to lose that one.
Did not. No. No, that hurt. That hurt. And, I saw we sat on the show last week and said, man, Florida's look good. Like they dropped the one opening weekend, didn't look good against Kentucky and whatnot, but have played well at home. I was really confident in the Gators this weekend. It doesn't hurt when you give up 14 points in the first 3 minutes. And then, I saw something today, this morning, actually, they have a tough remaining schedule as well. And it doesn't help that your big rivalry game at the end of the year is against the undefeated playoff contender team in Florida State as well. And so a tough road. They go to Baton Rouge next week, but one more loss, and Billy Napier will be guaranteed to possess the fewest number of wins by a Florida head coach since 1980. And like that is, Florida is not a tough place to recruit. And once you get your guys in there, it should not be a tough place to win, especially at home. And so to a 2-16, you nailed it, Chris. Florida did not need that one. Man, Billy Napier did not need that one. And now I feel like we're going to be hearing about it the rest of the year.
At LSU, at Missouri, Florida State. That is what's up.
That's tough. That might be the toughest Final Three stretch.
It's got to be.
And
this is weird to say that their best shot at a win might be at LSU, because I wonder where LSU's head is going to be after getting what it came to play for this year. There's no way they're going to Daniels now with 3 losses. Daniels doesn't come. Man, I know Nussmeier's good, but yeah, that might be their best chance, which is more statement about the rest of the schedule than anything.
That's a steep hill to climb. But yeah, disappointing for Florida. I know that they are very, obviously you talk about, winning traditions, man. When Florida is good, I believe this conference is better and college football is better as a whole when Florida's winning. It's fun. I've said multiple times on this show that Florida is my favorite place to play in the entire conference. I've had, it's just a really, really cool place. And I hate to see a place like that be, where it's at right now, because I know what it can be. We all know what it can be, right? And I'd love to see it get back to that.
All right. I think the two places right now that just have lost hope, Vandy, Mississippi State.
Yeah, those two guys for sure.
I'm very interested to see what happens with Zach Arnett. They just don't have an offense left.
Yeah. And that was their backbone with Mike Leach, right? Like I told you, and I said this last week on the show, Chris, like, I looked at, in previous years, especially when Mike Leach was there, you tell me Mississippi State, I'm thinking a lot of yards and a lot of points, especially through the air. And that's the exact opposite of what this team is now. And so you look, and I've said this multiple times as well, a lot of sympathy for Zach Arnett, a lot of sympathy for those players. Obviously a head coach suddenly passing away is something that is probably a lot harder to go through than maybe us casual fans think. But man, they're just dysfunctional. They don't look it. Kentucky was fine. They weren't anything outstanding, and they still beat them 24-3. Like, there's no chance there. And so some soul searching in Starkville for sure. Vanderbilt the same. They got, like I said, South Carolina coming up, so maybe the last opportunity to get a win there. But there's, like we talked about, we entered this season, Chris, if you remember, we said everyone feels like they're disrespected. And one of the most common ones was from Mississippi State fans, right?
Yeah.
People feeling disrespected. And I understand that there's a narrative that happens over the offseason and, media days and all kinds of stuff, right? I understand that. But the good news and the bad news is some people are going to excel and some people are going to hit lower than their expectations. Right now, those are the two teams that are obviously underperforming. And teams like Missouri who are overachieving. And so it's the reality. It's why you play the games in this conference. It's why it's so cutthroat. That's why the turnover of coaches and the best coaches are in this conference. But you want to stick around, baby. We need to see those wins pile up.
All right, bowl projections. We'll get there in just a minute. But before we do, Chomps is our go-to snack. Perfect after a workout, halftime, whatever. 9 flavors, so something for everyone. The place to start is the trial pack that's got 6 different flavors, 3 proteins there, 9 to 10 grams of protein, 60 to 100 calories per stick, whole 30 keto and certified paleo, gluten-free, free of the top 9 allergens, no hidden harmful ingredients. Best of all, they taste great. You will love them. Your kids will love them. They are good. They are good for you. What else would you like? Use our promo code that you can see in the ticker at Chomps. Get 15% off your first order and help out those who help our show. Gavin, playoff projections and bowl projections. And these are according to Jerry Palm, and I got to say, right off the top, his 4 playoff teams, Georgia and Texas in the 1-4 matchup, Michigan and Florida State in the 2-3. That is interesting. I believe in Florida State to get there.
Yep.
I believe it's going to be one SEC team. I think it's going to be one Big Ten team. We'll do this on a different show. Seeing Texas in, I guess that's the old Oregon's going to knock off Washington and somebody's got to go home under that scenario, but that was a little surprising to me.
But and so that's a little surprising to me too, especially seeing Oregon in there. So just to recap here, this is Jerry Palm from CBS, and what he has is Georgia, Texas in the 1-4 in the All-State Sugar Bowl, and on the other side in the Rose Bowl, which is the other semifinal, is Michigan, Florida State. The next 2 out are Oregon, Ohio State. So I'm assuming what he's saying is Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, but that Oregon placement in there tells me that when Oregon and Washington meet again in the Pac-12 championship, Oregon's going to knock them off. And so for me, I see that as, okay, you take Texas and Oregon's resumes, right? And Texas's 1 loss is to Oklahoma. That's looking worse and worse by the week because now they've lost back-to-back games against Kansas and Oklahoma State. But they're saying that they avenged that loss or they may not even get to play them now in the Big 12 championship game when Oregon's only loss is going to be to, I'd assume, an undefeated Washington that they beat and then our conference champions as well. To me, that's a better resume than Texas. And look, I know Texas has that win, like I said, in Tuscaloosa. It probably still is the best win in the country. But in terms of overall body, Oregon might win that battle. And so it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out because, they're playing well. They went on and not only beat Utah in Utah, who a lot of people don't, but they tossed them around in Utah in a sold-out crowd. And then, is what my man's saying on this bowl projections is saying that they're gonna beat an undefeated Washington team in the Pac-12 final. So to me, that's a better resume than Texas. Look, and that's why these are projections. Is this going to happen? Probably not. He'd probably be a very rich man if this was a bet slip on FanDuel right now. But this is why we play the games, and especially the conference championship. But definitely an interesting, but also it's a possible top 6 for sure.
We will unpack that a little later in the week. We'll probably do a little playoff preview tomorrow for the top 25 unveiling and then unpack what the committee actually does on Wednesday. But you got Washington and Tulane in the Fiesta Bowl. We'll just do SEC teams from here. You got Ole Miss, Penn State. That'd be interesting. One team that can't move the ball against one team that absolutely can. I would like Ole Miss in that scenario.
Yep.
Oregon, Alabama. Now that would be playoff caliber.
That would be
matchup there in the Cotton Bowl.
That would be, and like I've said this multiple times on the show as well, Chris. There's no one more bullish on Dan Lanning. It's just a matter of time before that guy's back in this conference. Dude is feisty. His players play hard for him. Obviously, comes from the Saban tree. Was a general manager. Was a GA, a graduate assistant for Saban at Alabama before he ascended up the ranks and become Georgia's defense coordinator in not a lot of years. And that's impressive about a person. He'll be back in this conference as a head coach before long. I can say the same thing about Mike Elko. I'm not sure if I don't think Duke is obviously in a New Year's Six bowl or anything, but the job he's done. I know I'm getting a little off topic here, but those are 2 guys that we're going to see maybe in conference that have done an unbelievable job with their team this year. I would love to see Dan Lanning against Nick Saban in a New Year's Six bowl. Man, I think that could be grit your teeth and feisty and a lot of veins popping out of the neck and the forehead from the sidelines in that game. Yes. I think so.
Now here's one I've not seen anywhere. You've got Iowa and Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl, projected by Jerry Palm. I'm going to put the over/under for points for Iowa in that one at 2.5. Which way would you go?
I think that's accurate. I mean, I'm looking at that right now, and that might be the same score as the UConn game this past week.
I think those teams could play baseball and maybe score more.
I hope that's
runs, and that you'd have points in this one.
I hope that's not a matchup. That would not be a very fun matchup to watch, to be honest with you. I'd like to see a better opponent for Tennessee.
NC State, LSU, depending on how interested LSU shows. That's not
right.
I would hope for something better for LSU. Mm-hmm. LSU and Ohio, now that'd be fascinating.
It could, like you said, it's just going to be interesting to see where LSU's head's at by the end of the year because they've just been through the ringer.
Yeah, and who opts out, who doesn't.
Right.
Music City Bowl, Wisconsin and Texas A&M. I would think that would be two teams that would be potentially disinterested based on expectations versus performance. But yeah,
I love the Music City Bowl. Obviously, I'm here in Nashville, and so if it's
just don't give us Iowa, Kentucky again, please, God,
don't give me Iowa, Kentucky. But at the same time, if you're playing the Music City Bowl, you probably fell a little short of your goals for the year. So
yeah. We got North Carolina, Missouri in the Gator Bowl. That would be interesting.
Could be very
They've still got Jerry Palm has got Florida projected to go to a bowl. It's got Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl. I'm not sure who Florida beat in its last 3 games to get there, but that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think, man, that's another one. Like, well, I guess Kansas State, Missouri would be a rematch, but I don't know. I would like to see. If you're going to go SEC on Kansas State, I would like hey, LSU, that's a better matchup. Let Florida and NC State play. If we have our druthers here.
I like it.
Oklahoma and Auburn in the Texas Bowl.
Man, what a drop off for Oklahoma. 2 weeks ago, we're on this show talking about them competing in the playoff, and now they get to play an Auburn team that is going to squeak into a bowl game.
Now this bit Duke and the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
That's
facing
it.
Kentucky.
Yeah, that could be a good one. Like I said, Mike Elko done a great job there, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind a mayonnaise bath after that one. So
I think we're going to do that. We need to bend the rules and have a mandatory basketball game afterwards between those two teams.
Duke and Kentucky. Yeah, you're right. Seriously, they should do that. They should do that. That would be a good one.
That's got to be. No, we got. Okay, Jerry Palm has got South Carolina getting to the Birmingham Bowl. Now, I don't know if we're getting into that 5-7 bowl territory here with some of these, because that's a lot of SEC teams in bowls that have got some work to do.
That is.
South Carolina would have to beat Vandy, Kentucky, and Clemson. Am I right? Because they're a 3-win team at this point, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Come on, Jerry. I'm not sure.
Let me make sure I got that right. South Carolina's got 3 wins, so I'm not. I have some doubts about that. Although South Carolina, this is when Shane Beamer's teams come on like gangbusters and do what you didn't think. Now here's another.
We got Mississippi State in there too.
Yeah, like what is going on here?
Well, he's got a little plus next to it. I don't know what that even means, but yeah, who do they have left? They're 4-5.
Okay, that plus is a replacement team. So
gotcha.
I guess that's your.
Well, they're 4-5. They're 4-5, and they got Southern Miss at home, and then
which they'll win.
Yep, and then they got to win one of the two between A&M or Ole Miss, which who knows?
Don't feel great about that. I just don't think they can score.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it.
Parting thoughts, my man.
Winners, a lot good winners. Alabama from this weekend, Arkansas, big win, much needed win. Losers, Florida, just can't take that loss at all. And it's just going to be really interesting to see how that goes. But maybe there were some more primetime games in the past, but overall as a whole, tight games this weekend. We didn't speak a lot about Missouri, Georgia today. Look, no moral victories, but the future cannot be brighter in Columbia, Missouri. And I got to hope, and hopefully we hit on this later this week, Chris. But I was so impressed with Missouri. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with a team that won 26 in a row at home. Brady Cook, Garrett Schrader, guys, I could not be more impressed with Missouri. And look, you talk about rooting for good guys. I think Drink's a good coach, and it's easy to root for guys like Brady Cook as well, who I think is just an absolute warrior. So hopefully we get into this more so. I apologize for our Missouri fans that watch our show here that we didn't get into it, but hopefully later in the week. No moral victories, but you're lying to yourself if the future's not bright there in Columbia.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one thing that I said on our Saturday Night Recap show is I thought that's the kind of game that Georgia has just shown up and beaten somebody into oblivion.
Yep.
That's the kind of game that Georgia goes out and wins 45-3 in a lot of scenarios. I mean, it happened to Oregon to open the season. What was it, last year?
Mm-hmm.
When Georgia shows up and decides it wants to put the hammer down, more often than not, it is successful in doing that, especially when it is playing at home.
Yep.
And that did not happen to Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
look, you're sitting there. You have lost to LSU. You've lost to Georgia. No shame in that. You're recruiting at a high level. You got the number one player in the country committed.
Yep.
You know, for all the fault that people have had with Drinkwitz, they've not been bad. I mean, they've just been a 6-win team every year.
Yep.
He's found a way to take them to another level, and then their losses, they haven't been embarrassed. I feel like that is a program headed in a better direction.
And not only have they not been embarrassed, but like there were serious moments in the second half. You could even say the fourth quarter where like they have a chance to win the game in those 2 losses. And that's impressive. That's as impressive as anything. And he's still doing it with tenured guys. And you know, we obviously know he's recruiting at a high level with Burden there and getting the fruits of his labor there. And he's still got it going on, man. I was impressed with their physicality, their grit, their toughness, and they really went toe-to-toe with Georgia in their house, man. I got to give my props up to them. I really do.
Okay, tomorrow we'll be live again at 11 Central. We usually go to about 11:45-ish or so. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on how much we have to talk about. We will take a look at the playoffs tomorrow, maybe try to read into some of what the committee did last week, try to take some results from last weekend, maybe make a guess at what we'll see Tuesday night. Wednesday, we'll react to what the committee did and maybe handicap the playoff chase. We'll take a look at upcoming games in the next few shows. Again, we do this every day starting at 11 on weekdays. And then hoops content. Guess what? Season starts today. We are literally, as we're doing this, a few hours from tip-off of SEC action. Georgia, Oregon with the big one today. And I think there's 8 or 9 other games. We will have a recap of those either late Monday night, probably Tuesday morning, I think is when we're planning. So going to talk some hoops because we talk everything football, baseball, and basketball here. Yep. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button, enable your notifications so you know when we've got something going up. Have a great day. God bless you. Thanks for watching Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.